we're going to do this is I invited everybody to Zoom. I know we said we didn't want to Zoom, but just for the first week to see how this goes. So if you want to jump on Zoom, feel free to, but I'm recording this lecture so that it can be uploaded to Canvas, okay? So anytime that I cover new content, I'll upload a video. So I'll clip it and put it up there. So pay attention to me. That way we can get through the notes quicker, ask questions as we go through, and then you'll fill in your notes and stuff on the back end, okay? But if you want to jot down some sidebar stuff in your notebook, that is completely fine too, okay? Anybody have questions? Everybody have a good weekend? Everybody have a good first week of school? How are we feeling? Great. You're feeling great?
No.
I love it.
No. No, I'm not sarcastic. That's.
But how are we feeling? Like really? How are we feeling? Good, bad, happy, sad, not good? What's the matter? You don't like it? Do you not like being here, or you don't like being online? So you'd rather be here. Gotcha. Zach or Reed? How are you feeling? Yeah? You don't care? You'd rather be here, you'd rather be online, it doesn't matter to you. Matthew? Doesn't matter to you either? Ricky? Markevian? Huh? You plead the fifth? Gabby? You don't like online? I got it.
I just got skipped over.
No, I asked you first, dude.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Oh my goodness. All right. Anyway, we're rolling. So we're going to do a quick review of last week. So we talked about what last week?
We talked about homeostasis.
Oh, yes, girl. What else? Stimulus. Response. What else? Mr. H. Green. Yeah. So what are they? The what? What did we talk about? The what?
Growth and development.
We did talk about that, but what?
Acronym of.
It is the what? They are the what? Characteristics of life.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about them. So Mr. H. Green, M is what? Metabolism. R, response. Homeostasis.
Growth and development.
Yep, R, reproduction. E,
Environment.
excretion and
Environment.
no,
Erosion.
It's probably this EF.
not EF, just E. EV.
Evolution.
Evolution.
I totally got that.
And the N is what? Nutrients. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So before we jump into new content today, we're going to talk about macromolecules. Please, 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 I sent out a remind message yesterday and an email on Canvas. Please keep up with your work. Everything was due Friday, and I still had kiddos not have their stuff submitted. I gave you till Sunday, and then I was still getting emails this morning that we didn't complete stuff. So please, please keep up. It's going to be the best case scenario for you and me. Okay?
So we doing
Macromolecules. What? I have guided notes on the computer, but I want y'all to pay attention to me because I have to upload a video, and I have has to be a certain length, so we're uploading. So if you want to write some stuff down, you're welcome to, but there are guided notes that go with it. All right. What's up? We did not have vocabulary last week. This week it started. Okay? Huh? Week 2. Yes. But I need you to not be doing that and paying attention to me. So close your laptop. All right. All right. So today we're talking about macromolecules. So by understanding the chemistry and molecules that make up life, we will have a deeper insight into how life actually functions. Okay, so the 4 major macromolecules you see at the bottom of the board: carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. These will come back, okay, throughout the rest of bio. Say what? Right there. Oh, you'll see them. They're coming, I promise. All right, so there are 4 groups of molecules that make up the building blocks of life. So these are called the macromolecules. You might also see them called biomolecules or organic molecules. They are called all 3 things. So you may see them one way or another, okay? So up here is a picture of a carbohydrate, a lipid, a protein, and a nucleic acid. And we're going to talk about each one of these individually. Okay, so these are what carbs look like. They are a ring structure. Lipids come in long chains. Okay, so they have what is known as a glycerol head and 3 fatty acid tails.
What's the last one called?
Nucleic acids. Okay, then you've got proteins. These link together. I like to relate it to a pearl necklace. So if you have a bunch of pearls and you link them together, they make a long chain. And then last is a nucleic acid. And depending on which one we're talking about, they are either single-stranded or double-stranded. Okay, so those are the 4 main macromolecules, aka biomolecules, aka organic. All right, so what do all these structures have in common?
There is food.
Most of them.
Food.
They are
Wait, what
essential
is
to life.
salicylic acid?
They are essential to life.
They are essential to life.
Wait. Whoa.
All right, so macromolecules are formed by a process called polymerization, okay? Big word, major keyword in there is polymer. So this is when large polymers are built by joining a small subunit called a monomer together. So the best way to remember this, you need to know the difference between a monomer and a polymer. Mono means what? One, okay? So if you have a bunch of monomers together, they make what is known as a polymer. So poly means what? Many. Okay, so polymer is essentially a bunch of monomers put together. So a polymer is also another way of being a macromolecule.
We have Marquivia.
I do. Right there.
Yeah, we got a Marquivia. Sure, no problem. Okay.
Write him a pass. Do you have a pass? All right, Marquise. Hey, nobody asked for him to hear from the peanut gallery. Dr. O'Day. All right. So another way to look at this, what do you see a picture of up there? Building blocks, okay? So anybody have younger brothers or sisters in here?
No.
Did they play with blocks? Or did they play with blocks? All right, so if you have one block, me. Next time it's a Mayan, okay? All right, so if you have one block, right, that is a monomer, a single unit. If you put those building blocks together to make something, that is essentially your polymer. So a bunch of monomers make a polymer. Everybody with me?
Yes.
All right, so you're going to do the amoeba sisters on your head puzzle. So up here is a carbohydrate. We all know what carbs are? Yes? What are they?
They're the reason I'm fat.
Girl, bye. What's a carb?
Starch.
Starch is one. What? Bread. Yep. Okay, those are great examples. So all these things that you see up here, pasta, rice, okay, bread, those are all examples of carbohydrates. Down here, glucose. Glucose would be the monomer, so building block of a carbohydrate. And then if we link a bunch of them together, that's what gives us our actual carb. So carbohydrates are made up of CHO. So something to remember, and you're probably going to hear this in your video, is CHO, CHO, CHON, CHOMP. CHO, CHON, CHOMP. So that's the way to remember what the macromolecules are made up of. So carbs are made up of CHO. What's C stand for?
Carbon.
Carbon.
Hydrogen.
Beautiful. Okay. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. So here, you're going to see these words pop up: polysaccharide and monosaccharide. So poly means what again?
Multiple.
Multiple, many, and mono means one. Does anybody know what saccharide means?
No.
Have you ever heard of it? Okay. Saccharide is a sugar. So what am I talking about here? Polysaccharides.
A lot of sugar.
A lot of sugars, yes. And here I'm talking about what?
One sugar.
One sugar. Okay, so polysaccharides are the polymers that are made up of a bunch of monosaccharides, which are your individual sugars or simple sugars. So this word right here, this is your building block or monomer of a carbohydrate, and you need to know that. You don't have, this is all on your notes online. That's why I said you could just be paying attention to me. You're going to get all of this, okay? This is for us to be able to interact and you ask questions instead of writing while I'm talking, okay? So if you put a bunch of monosaccharides together, they make a polysaccharide, which is in turn our carbohydrate. So there are some simple sugars and then there are more complex sugars. So an example of a simple sugar is glucose. And then more complex sugar would be something like starch. And what do we find starch in?
Pasta.
Pasta. Bread. Potatoes. Okay. So carbs are the main source of immediate energy. So we take a carbon, okay, and it gives us immediate energy. But eventually that carb, okay, when we eat a lot of them, if we don't have a quick metabolism, right, they turn into fat, okay? Another function of a carbohydrate is a structural purpose, okay? So we'll see this picture again when we get to the cell membrane. All right. So carbs, some examples. The tough fiber that we find in plants is called cellulose. Sugars are an example of carb, and sugars typically end in OSE. So if you ever hear something, sucrose, lactose, maltose, galactose, those are all examples of sugars, okay? So up here are some: fructose, glucose, and galactose. And then you have things like starches, which are much more complex. So that would be a polysaccharide, and glucose would be a monosaccharide. Any questions so far? Nope. Say what? Say. Correct. you put a bunch of monosaccharides together and then you make a polysaccharide. Very good. All right. So typically, I would do a lab with this, where you would be able to detect what's in specific food, but we unfortunately can't do that. So to detect a carbohydrate, there's two ways, depending on if it's simple or complex. Okay, so if it is simple, if you were to use what is known as Benedict solution, it would turn orange. Obviously, if it doesn't turn orange, no carb. Okay, a starch, a much more complex carbohydrate, we would use iodine or Lugol solution. And if we were to put that in and it turned deep purple, that means that there is some type of starch present. Okay, so typically a lab that I would do is I would go and buy a Happy Meal and I'd put it in a blender and it would turn into a bunch of mush. And then you would use that to test for the different macromolecules. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, the next one is a lipid. So lipids are also known as a fat. Okay, so up here you see some candles, some butter, some oil. Okay, these are all fats. So lipids are also made up of CHO. So C is what? Carbon. H, O, beautiful. Okay, so their building block or monomer, because you can see it any of those ways, is made up of glycerol and fatty acids. So it's made up of a glycerol head and 3 fatty acid chains. Okay, so something else. So I've already told you, just to backtrack for a second. Macromolecules can also be called what? A B and an O. Biomolecules or O? Organic, okay? So when I ask you, or if I were to ask you what the monomer of something is, okay, a monomer is also known as a building block. Because remember, if we have one block, that's mono. We have a bunch of blocks, that's what? Polymer, okay? Or you might also see the word subunits. All 3 of those mean the same thing. It is a monomer, okay? So the monomer of a carb is a monosaccharide, and the monomer or building block or subunit of a lipid is a glycerol head and 3 fatty acid tails, okay? Everybody with me? Yes? We good? All right. So, some functions of a lipid, and this list can go on. Lipids are made up of fats, oils, and waxes. Okay? They are used to store energy. So remember we said carbs are what? What's a carb? Gives us what? Quick energy, immediate energy, right? So lipids are what store energy. So this is long-term energy storage. So those carbs, if you don't burn those off, they are going to turn into fat, okay? They also make up the cell membrane, which we will talk about when we get to the cell membrane. Okay, they make up the bilayer, and they are used as waterproof coverings. Some other things that you might see, anybody know what this is? A walrus, yes. Where do walrus live? In a cove, right? So what do they have? How do they live?
They have a little.
You what? Fur. That looks like fur to you. Blubber. Yes, blubber. Okay, so walrus have blubber, and blubber is a fat. What does the blubber do for them? Keeps them warm. Okay, so that acts as insulation. So lipids can be an insulator because they can help keep warm. Okay, And then something else that I don't necessarily have up here, but lipids also act as a what? Cushion. Yes, sorry. I can't, the masks, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm a loud person, so I hope y'all can hear me, but cushion, okay? So cushion for your cushion, think of it that way, okay? Y'all got it? All right, so fats act as a cushion.
What?
Yeah.
So with carbs, you
Yes.
have to burn those off. Most people have to burn them off, but some people with a high metabolism their body burns off.
Well, you're still burning it off, but just your metabolism, depending on how quick it is,
Helps.
okay, helps. Yes. Yes.
So that's like a means
All right, that's, yeah. Not me. Okay, I gotta work it off. So if I want to eat all the carbs, I gotta work it off. All right, so lipids, the way we test for those is a brown paper bag. So if I were to take a paper bag and I were to put an apple in there, would anything happen to the bag? Nope. Okay, if I were to take a paper bag and put a bunch of potato chips in there, would something happen to the bag? Okay, depending, yes, more than likely, but what would happen? Okay, it would get greasy. Or if I put French fries in there, it would get greasy. Okay, so that's how we detect a lipid. Next are proteins, and proteins are super, 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 super important. Okay, these are some examples, and we're going to talk about these, but proteins are important because they are found within our body and they help our bodies function. So proteins are made up of CHON. So we went from CHO to CHO, but now we went to CHON. So what are we adding? Nitrogen, okay? So the subunit, building block, monomer, however you want to look at it, but know all three, is an amino acid, okay? Proteins are made up of amino acids. So remember I said that I like to compare a protein to a pearl necklace. So the protein would be the pearl necklace, but the individual pearls would be the what? The amino acids, that's right, okay? So the amino acids link together, make a protein, and another way we call protein is it's made, it forms a polypeptide chain. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to protein synthesis, but really, polypeptide, poly means what?
A lot.
Many, a lot, okay? So polypeptide, the reason that we call these a polypeptide chain is because if you were to have, sorry, I'm a drawer. If you were to have a pearl necklace and you had, has anybody ever heard of a pearl necklace that you buy a pearl and then you add a pearl? Okay, all right. So say you get some pearls and you add them, right? These pieces that link those pearls or link our protein are called peptide bonds. So that's where the polypeptide chain comes in. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
Boys, you with me back there? Yeah? All right. So monomer, aka amino acid here, these are linked together by the peptide bond. They form the polypeptide chain, which is our protein. Okay? Something else, there are about 20 different amino acids, and amino acids, they look structurally pretty similar. So this is the structure, and you're going to see this more tomorrow. This is the structure of an amino acid. So all amino acids have an amino group. They have a carboxylic group, a lone hydrogen, and then they have what is known as an R group. This R group is what changes from amino acid to amino acid, and that's what makes it different. Okay? All right. So proteins, and this is something I might remember or jot down, are the most diverse macromolecule. okay? And the reason is because they play various roles in the body. So they speed up reactions. Those are known as enzymes, and we'll talk about enzymes on Wednesday. They help to form muscle. They help transport substances, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the cell membrane as well, because here's your cell membrane down here, and we have what are known as protein channels, and that's what allows things in and out of a cell, okay? And lastly, they help fight disease. So super, super, super important, okay? 2 super important examples of proteins are hemoglobin and insulin, and we find both of these in our body. So hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen throughout our red blood cells, and insulin, okay, I'm sure most of us have heard of this, yes? Okay, insulin is what helps regulate our blood sugar, okay? So super important, super, super important. So when I think of insulin, or you think of insulin, what do you think of? Diabetes, right? And diabetes is no joke, okay? So insulin is important. So the way we detect a protein is through burette solution. So burette solution turns from blue to light purple if there is a protein. So I wish that we could do this lab so that y'all could see this, but this is the way we would detect it.
Can't you get like a video or something?
I can try. I know. I usually do a lab, so that's fine, but I can try. True, but I'm a hands-on person. Okay. All right. Last but not least is nucleic acids. Okay. Nucleic acids we will also talk about in a little bit more depth once we get to DNA. So nucleic acids are now, we're adding a new thing, are made up of chomp. So let's go again. C, carbon.
Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen.
Sir.
No. Good try, though. Good try, good try.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that.
pH. Look on the board, maybe he might help you.
Acid.
Well, so phosphorus, but phosphate. Phosphate group, okay? So, to the left, the purple, green, and yellow picture on the board, that is a nucleotide. That is the building block, aka monomer, aka subunit of a nucleic acid. In my opinion, this is probably the easiest one to remember because nucleic, girl, nucleotides. There's a clock right there, friend. Okay? All right. So, nucleotides are made up of 3 things, and they are a 5-carbon sugar, so that's this green 5-sided figure. A phosphate group, which is this purple circle, and a nitrogenous or nitrogen base, okay? So, to the right, this is DNA, okay? So, the phosphate and the sugar form the outside of the DNA, and the bases form the middle. So when we get into DNA, we'll talk about that. So it kind of looks like a ladder. So the bases are what make up what you would walk up, the rungs.
Except it's
Correct. It is twisted. Okay? So, and then the sugars and phosphates alternate on the sides, and they form the backbone to the DNA molecule. Okay? So, nucleic acids do two things. They store and they transmit hereditary information. So there are only two examples. They are DNA and RNA. And DNA is what stores genetic information, and RNA is what transmits it. Because I'm going to tell you something now, and we'll see who remembers it when we get there. DNA can never, I don't like to use the word never, but it's true for this, leave the nucleus. Only RNA can leave the nucleus, so that is why DNA stores and RNA transmits. RNA is able to take DNA's message from the nucleus to other parts of the cell.
Wait, what was the one that stores it?
DNA. Okay? So the only two examples are DNA and RNA. So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA is ribonucleic acid. So DNA, and we'll talk about this when we get there, is double-stranded, and RNA is single-stranded. Any questions? Nope. Are you sure? So, you will see this tomorrow and today, but we'll build on the board tomorrow. You need to make sure you know the macromolecules. How many are there? 4. What are they?
Protein,
Carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Okay? And then we'll go over this again tomorrow, but you need to know their building block, aka monomer, aka subunit. You need to know their function and the examples. Okay? Can anybody tell me an example of protein other than what I had up on the board? Chicken. Yeah. What else? Eggs. Yep. So we can eat what? Meat. Whey protein.
Whey.
Yes.
W-H.
Yes. That you scoop out and put in a container and shake up with water or milk. Yes. Okay. So there's lots of ways that we can take in protein, but there are lots of proteins that are already in our body to help us function. All right. Any questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Yes, sir.
So when